Hi, welcome to Moina Bass Fishes. I'm Jim Moina. This is a recap of the Lake Vermilion tournament, which was put on by the Champions Tour. Lake Vermilion is in northern Minnesota. It's a smallmouth and largemouth fishery. Um, it's also got fabulous musky fishing, really good walleye fishing. Just a great lake to fish in general. A lot of bites to be had there, whatever species you're after. So anyhow, we had a tournament there, July 7th, which was yesterday, 2022. I finished 7th place. I scored 29 bass for 48 pounds, 2 ounces. The leader, or the winner, David Larson, congratulations. He had 63 pounds and 1 ounce. So basically, what am I, about 15 pounds off the lead, off the win, which is substantial. But I mean, you can gobble that up quick if you get in the right area, doing the right thing. That's for sure. But anyhow, I know it was. This is the third time. Let me just back this up. Now, the Champions Tour is a tournament circuit that does the format where every fish that you catch counts to your total. So if you get, and it's got to be 1 pound minimum. So each pro has a boat official in the boat that rides with them, and with each fish you catch, you weigh it right there where you catch it. The weight's recorded, and then the fish is released right there. So very, very good for the fish. I mean, that way they don't have to go in a live well, and you don't have to haul them around, to a weigh-in. And I think you just do. It's a better format for the fishery, I believe. But I don't think the 5-fish limit format will ever go away. But anyways, that's a whole nother discussion. Back to Lake Vermilion. So this is the third time I've been there. I think in the last few years. I think 4 years ago we were there for the Champions Tour, and then 2 years ago, and now again this year. Now, 4 years ago I got 2nd place, and 2 years ago I got 4th place. When I got 2nd, I was basically 1 fish off the win. When I got 4th, I was basically just 2-pounders off the win. And then this year, well, it was like 15 pounds off the win. So, but it was way different this time. The other 2 years we were there in August. I think at the very end of July, and then in early August was when we were there. And here we were, July 7th. So only a few weeks sooner, but with the Minnesota had a super late ice out in northern Minnesota, super late, and we haven't had a ton of hot weather, so really the fish were behind their seasonal progress, and that played a huge role in catching them in yesterday's tournament. One thing I noticed, so I practiced for 2.5 days, and it wasn't until late on the last day of practice that I realized that there were still a lot of fry garters around. And what that means is when bass spawn, their eggs hatch. Well, the males always stick around the eggs, and then they stick around the newly hatched bass fry. Fry is the name of the little babies. And so they guard them for a week or two after they hatch. And so there were still a lot of these fry clouds around with the male bass guarding them. And the reason why and how I picked up on that is there was a couple clues. One, I was getting some extremely shallow bites, and then 2, every once in a while you'd see a little splash up shallow. And I mean, really shallow, right up on the shore, right up on nothing looking shorelines. There might be just like a little odd rock right there, or there might be a bushy, branchy bush that blew in the water there, or in some cases, just not much at all. but you'd see these splashes. Not a lot, but every once in a while. And then I did see a couple off the bank a little ways, not like over deep water, but just off the bank a little ways. But seeing that, I'm like, okay, this is starting to look like a fry thing here. And then of course, when you start seeing that, of course, I got to go right up there and just look visually to see it and confirm it. And sure enough, you can see the fry. It's a little different than seeing largemouth fry. Largemouth fry are more lighter colored, kind of greenish color, and the fry are going to be light. I mean, they're tiny, like an inch. I mean, when they're newly hatched, they may not even be a full inch yet. But the largemouth will be like in a ball, a cloud. It's like a cloud. You see a cloud of these things. And from a distance, a largemouth fry will almost look like kind of orangish, brownish, greenish. But sometimes they have that orangish kind of look to them. But anyhow, they'll be like in a ball like the size of a hula hoop maybe, something like that, or a little smaller or slightly bigger, but usually not much bigger than a hula hoop. And they'll just all be tight together. Smallmouth fry are different. First of all, when I run it, they're almost like jet black, just really just dark son of a guns. The same similar size as a largemouth fry, but they're much more loosely together. Like if you come across some smallmouth fry, you just might see them spread along a shoreline for like 10 yards, or well, maybe not 10 yards, but like 5 yards. So they're like more just loosely. Collectively they're still together, but just a lot looser in how they're holding formation. So, and they're black. So those are kind of the two differences. And Vermilion's got both largemouth and smallmouth, with the smallmouth being predominant. Probably 80 to 90% of the fish weighed in the tournament were smallies yesterday. Probably 90%, really. Maybe 80, I don't know. Anyhow, and the reason why I didn't pick up on this fry sooner is because it was cloudy and windy the first day and a half I was there, and you can't really see. You can't see when it's cloudy and the wind was blowing. Couldn't really pick up on it, and that's why I was just slow to pick up on it. So, knowing this. And I pretty much committed to shallow in practice. I mean, that's all I wanted to do was fish shallow. Because that's what I've done in the past. The previous 2 years, the first year there, I did have a couple offshore reefs that had some fish. But then I also caught a lot of fish under boat docks. The second year, the second time I was there, I got fourth. I never even practiced. I had a MLF Pro Circuit tournament the day before down in La Crosse. I drove all the way up from there up to Vermilion and got a few hours of sleep. Got up the next morning with just hit it, and I'm just like, I'll just go fish docks, and that's what I did. Although I did check my reefs from the previous time, they didn't have anything on them, but it's just dock pounding and it worked well. Well, this time around, when I went up there, I really, really anticipated a strong dock bite. I mean, I figured, I knew we weren't far off the spawn. I didn't know quite where it would be. And I was just anticipating a lot of them big females still being around docks, and the males would be around the docks. And that was not the case at all. It was not the case. The dock bite was still there. But you'd catch some 1-pounders, maybe a 2-pounder. The big females, I never even caught one, and the whole time I was there, I never caught one. The biggest fish I caught in the tournament was a 3.5, and I believe that one was actually on a bed, because it was. There's a lot of like what I call railroad tracks on Rainy Lake, and what that is. it's not actual railroad tracks, but people's at their cabins, they'll have like a boathouse on shore, and then they'll have railroad tracks running out from the boathouse down into the lake. And that track allows them to, they put their boat on a little platform that rides up and down these tracks, so they can wheel it up into their boathouse when they're done using their boat, and then when they want to use their boat, they can wheel it down the tracks and go fish with their boat or boating or whatever they're going to do. So these railroad tracks are like magnets for bedding fish and just fish in general. And they're always situated right next to a boat dock as well. So, but anyways, back to the biggest fish I caught in the tournament, which was 3.5, which I believe was the bedding fishes, because I know they like to bed on these train tracks. And this particular 3.5, I actually had the fish bite in practice. I never hooked them, never saw them, but it was right off this train track. And then when I went back in the tournament through right there, I caught the 3.5. So that fish was probably still on a bed. It was not even guarding it yet. It was probably still a bedded fish. And then I did see a couple other fish, little tiny guys, bedded in practice. I saw 2 of them, but it was so cloudy most of the time. You just could not see it. You couldn't see the beds. I mean, visibility wasn't an option. So that's where the smallmouth. Now I also had found a largemouth pattern, which was significant. Had things gone well on that pattern, I probably could have had like a 40-pound session out of that pattern, which is what you want. Going into this tournament, I knew I wanted to catch 40 fish, okay, and that would put me at about 80 pounds, is what I figured. So that was the goal. Now, obviously I fell short of that. Somebody's having a garage sale down the road. There's been a lot of cars going down there. But anyways, but the problem with the largemouth is they were so far on the other end of the lake that then you're giving up time. But I still felt like if things went well, I could get 20 of those and have like a 40-pound session there. Except the other problem was I also felt like I could fish closer and get a 20 fish session on smallmouth. But anyways, so going into the tournament, this is what I knew. I knew the dock pattern was sketchy, and I had this largemouth thing, but then I had an area of where there were a lot of smallmouths. So it kind of, I don't know. I knew the dock thing was not as good, so I was a little worried because the dock bite just was not happening. And that's what I leaned heavy on the 2 previous times I'd been there. So anyways, it's the morning. We have 2 sessions. We have all 50 boats fish the east side of the lake in one session. Then all 50 boats fish the west side of the lake in the afternoon session. So in the morning session, that didn't go so well. I mean, I felt like I was hacking my way through the whole day, really, but especially that morning session, just things weren't flowing. It wasn't in the groove. I wasn't getting around the fish. The dock bite was just not happening. I was trying to force the dock bite, and then I was trying to catch some up, because you would catch one every once in a while off the dock. Then I was trying to get some of the fry yarders, and I wasn't seeing the fry, but I just did a lot of shoreline casting to up super shallow to, odd looking rock formations and like train tracks, lay downs, and it really was a grind, really, that morning session. And I was sitting on like 5 or 6 fish for a while, for a long time. I mean, seriously, a lot of time went by where I didn't catch anything. I was dropping in the standings, and I think I dropped down into in the mid-20s shortly before the morning session was over. But I did catch. I got around some fish, and I saw some fry garters busting on fry on the shoreline, and I fished through it with my Nico rig, and I didn't catch any. And I'm like, dang, just what's going on here? So finally, I pulled out my marabou jig, which I never threw in practice, but I know it's a bait you got to have on, especially in these lakes, lakes up in northern Minnesota and Canada and that. You got to have one ready to go. So I pulled that out and I turned the boat around and I went back through that area where I saw where those fry garters were busting, and then also there was a big boulder, just an isolated boulder, where I'd cast a bunch around and never caught nothing. Well, I caught one of the fry garters on the hair jig, and then I caught one off that big boulder with the hair jig. And this was literally like with 10 minutes left in the morning session. So that, of course, that sets off the light bulb. So now I'm like, okay, so this format, we have a 1 hour break, okay? We fish 7 to 11 and then have 11 till noon. Everybody's got a 1 hour break. That's where everybody reports back to take off. They serve us a lunch. It's pretty cool, actually. If you got any tackle you got to retweak, you got, some time to do that. And then you fish an afternoon session, 1 to 4 on the other half of the lake. So the west half was our afternoon session, which is where I had a pretty good smallmouth pattern area, a pretty good smallmouth area, and then I also had a largemouth area, which was quite a bit further out west, which means I had to give up my time. And the other thing about the largemouth area was, in practice, I hooked a lot of them fish. I mean, they're really dumb fish in that lake, but I don't know. I felt like I had a reasonable shot at getting 20 fish there, and they were a 2 pound average, so I would have got 40 pounds out of that group. But I also had the smallmouth, thing going, which I felt like, I got a reasonable chance of getting 20 of those. And plus I have more time, and maybe I'll catch more than 20. But I could have gone either way. I really could have gone either way on that. So I decided to do the smallie thing because I felt like with that hair jig, discovering that hair jig bite, which I should not have just discovered it. I should have discovered that in practice is when I should have. But it was a mistake. It might have cost me the tournament, as I'll get to later. But anyways, in that afternoon session, I went to work with that hair jig, and I ended up, in the morning session, I ended up with 8 fish, 2 of which were on the hair jig in the last 10 minutes. And then in the 4 hour afternoon session, I caught, 21 fish, I believe it was. And all but maybe 3 of those were on the hair jig. The rest were on the Nico rig. So that things really picked up on that with that hair jig. Plus, I think I got in a little better area too. I think that might have helped. But still, I mean, I threw that stuff with the Nico rig and then would throw it with the hair jig, and they'd bite the hair or the marabou. Okay, so so I ended up with the 21 fish in the afternoon session. So I made the climb out of the mid-20s from the morning. At the end of the morning session, I was the 19th, but before I caught those 2 fish right at the end with the marabou jig, I was like in the 20s. So basically, once I went to that jig, I climbed from the 20s all the way up to a 7th place finish. And by the time it was all said and done. So, not bad. I'll take those comebacks. Just like on the Mississippi River, which was our first tournament. That was had to come back there too in the afternoon session. I finished the morning session in 12th there, and then ended up third after the afternoon. But anyways, so the lesson there is, and I should have known this. I should have had that marabou jig ready to go. And take this to note: when the second place guy got on stage, he told everybody he caught him on what he called a hair jig. So I'm assuming it was a marabou jig. And then when Dave Larson got on stage, same thing. Those guys, he caught most of his fish on the marabou jig. So, which really got me kicking myself, because I was really only 15 pounds behind winning. Had I had a 20 fish session in the morning, which would have been 12 more fish, that probably would have been about another 20 pounds in my total. So had I been on the right bait, I may have possibly won this tournament. Just made the bait switch too late. And I should have known, because I've done well with the marabou jig in the past, especially when you got a mayfly. This is the other thing. We had a mayfly hatch going as well. So you get the fry garters, which were kind of sketchy on other baits, except they went for that hair jig. And then we had a big mayfly hatch. There's all kinds of mayfly carcasses all over the lake. So with that going on, the fish are all kind of keying on smaller stuff and buggy kind of looking stuff, which is with the marabou is a small, finessey, buggy looking little critter. So I was just slow to getting on that. Big mistake. It certainly cost me, I'm sure it cost me some positions in the tournament, if not the win. Had I got on it, had I had the confidence to throw it right off the bat in the morning, could have been a different story for play. I'm surely would have finished higher had I got on that sooner. But anyhow, so let's just take a look at the baits that I did use. Not that. That's the old swim bait. Didn't even throw that in the tournament. Threw it in practice some, caught a few on it, but wasn't really into it a whole lot. What do we got here? This was top water. Let's get to that. We'll get right to the marabou jig. So there's the marabou jig I was throwing. That's a brown one. So pretty simple looking bait, and they get after it, man. You just throw it out there and it sinks kind of slow, and then when it gets bottom, I kind of pump it up and then let it just drift down again. And they typically hit it on the drift down. They don't really. It's not something you fish on the bottom. It's kind of something you kind of pop it up and then let it drift down. Let's see. And then here's the Nico rig, which caught some fish. Probably caught, I don't know, a third. This is what I use heavily in the morning session. And I did catch some. So that's a Nico rig, worm there. And then I caught one on this. Well, I caught one fry garter on this little popper. But I threw this around a lot of other fry garters without, because I'd see them splash, and I'd throw this over there, and no, nothing. So I don't know. And I tried a black popper, a black one, the same size, a Rebel Popper black one, thinking, they like this brown marabou, they like black marabou. So I'm like, hey, I'll throw a black popper. They'll go for that. But I don't know, they didn't go for it. And I've never thrown black poppers before, so that was kind of me just trying to maybe come up with something new in my fishing plan. Because I just bought that black hopper not too long ago. I'm like, hey, this is the perfect time to try it, and I really thought it was going to work. But I don't know. I guess I got to play around with it some more. Got one in the morning session on this spook. But again, I think it got ignored by a lot of fish that would otherwise hit the marabou. So I think I fished through a lot of fish in the morning. I really do. So anyways, yeah, that's just looking in here. God, they must be having a great garage sale. I should go down there and see if they got any hot fishing stuff down there, because it is on a lake, so maybe I could find some of the gems that are out of production. So, all right, well, anyways, that's it for the Lake Vermilion recap. It was just an interesting, I mean, the dock bite was such a surprise that it wasn't there. I mean, I still caught fish on docks, but they typically ran smaller. The biggest fish, I mean, I did catch one, a 3-pounder off a dock, but he was up, well, then the other one on the train tracks was near a dock. That one was bedded. And then the other 3-pounder, that one was probably bedded, because I hooked that fish in practice, or I didn't hook him. I had him bite a bait with no hook and shook him off. Never saw him, but it felt like that was a good one. So yes, I was fishing around docks, but just the size wasn't there like it used to be, and they weren't using the docks the same way. In other years, they'd be in the heavy shade of the dock, out on the deeper ends. This time around, a lot of them were up on the shallow side of the dock, where I'm sure where the fry were. And if you got out in the heavy shade, if you did get a bite there, it was like a 1-pounder, not any of the quality ones that I would see from the other years past. So yes, I guess in some essence they were using docks still, but not the same way or the same quality of fish. So, all right, that's it. Lake Vermilion, can't wait to go back. It's definitely a destination lake, especially if you're a multi-species fisherman, because you have you got fabulous musky fish in there. You got, from what I hear, great walleye fishing, and then of course the bass fishing there's plenty of those too, and they're dumb. at least yeah, I mean, when I say they're dumb, I'm comparing that to like a fish you might try to catch, you know, out of a heavily pressured southern reservoir that has multiple 200 boat tournaments every weekend. Those fish are educated. The fish on Lake Vermilion and a lot of other northern Minnesota lakes are relatively uneducated in that sense. All right, over.